This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Ticks are starting to come out in Kansas, so K-State veterinary entomologist Cassandra Olds starts the show to remind us of the different types of ticks and how people should handle them. K-State crop entomologist Jeff Whitworth keeps today's show moving as he mentions what pest growers will find in alfalfa. He also says how brown recluse spiders are something that people could start seeing. Concluding the show is K-State Research and Extension Horticulture Agent for Riley County, Gregg Eyestone, as he discusses the options to prevent crabgrass in cool season lawns. That and more is coming up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Thursday show talking about ticks in Kansas, which is a new K-State Research and Extension publication with K-State veterinary entomologist Cassandra Olds. Cassandra, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, happy to be here.
Cassandra, are the ticks out and about?
Sadly, they are. So, as most people are aware, we warmed up pretty quickly. So we actually found ticks were out last week already in Manhattan area. So they're out there.
And talking through a few different types of ticks today, and starting off with the American dog tick.
Yeah, so people will encounter this one fairly frequently, especially if you're out on trails and things like that. It's a big problem because it transmits a nasty pathogen, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and name suggests it really likes dogs. So it's one of the ones that we do worry about for contact with people.
What does it look like?
So ticks are always hard to describe. So please go and look at the resource. They're a brownish color, but they've got kind of like a lighter gray mottling on the top. And so the males and the females will look slightly different. The males are a little bit more ornate, more colorful in that they've got that patterning over the whole surface, the top surface. But the females have sort of a smaller little bit of a patterning, and then the rest of their body is just a bit of a brownish color.
And another tick that people can find in Kansas, the Lone Star tick.
This is the one that most people come across, right? And so there's the bit of most people, when they see it, they're, oh, that's the tick with the white spot, right? So it's a brown tick and it's got a white spot on it. That's only the female. So the males are just very, very simple brown-looking jobbies, right? And so if you get a brownish tick, they've got quite long mouth parts, right? So our Dermacenta variabilis that we just mentioned, a dog tick, it's got a shorter mouth part. So the Lone Star tick has a really long mouth part that shoots out. So if you get a brown jobby that looks like that or a brown one with a white spot, chances are it's a Lone Star tick.
And many people know of the concerns with Lone Star ticks, but what is that reminder?
They transmit a lot of pathogens, number one. And the more common concern that's been in the news a lot lately is this alpha-gal syndrome or the red meat allergy. And that's when you develop a sensitization and a food allergy to any mammalian product. And we care about this from dietary perspectives, but it's also very, very important because a lot of our medications that we make are stabilized using animal products or have animal byproducts in them. And so you can actually get allergic reactions to very, very important medications. So be on the lookout for this tick. Remove it as soon as you find it.
And we've talked about the American dog tick. However, there's also the brown dog tick.
Yeah, the brown dog tick is one of my favorites because they really have just latched onto a human lifestyle. So this is a tick that can complete its entire life cycle indoors, right? Because we have dogs near us. And so you can have them infesting homes and kennels and things like that. And it actually has the widest distribution of all the ticks that we talk about. So you can find it anywhere in the United States. So it's a big problem. It's mainly a problem for transmission of our Ehrlichias to our dogs. So it's a concern. It will bite humans, though.
And the black-legged tick, what's this tick?
Yeah, people worry about this one quite a lot because it is the vector for Lyme disease. Good news for us Kansans, it's not very common in the state. We mainly see it on the eastern part, and people do encounter it, especially when they're on trails. It likes to be on mice and wildlife, so anywhere where you're in a wildlifey area, you do run the risk of contracting it. It is a fairly distinct. It's got very dark black legs, and it looks different to the other ticks. So you'll very easily know that you have it.
And while all these ticks we've talked about so far are coming out, are there any ticks that are going to sleep right now?
Yeah, so there's a cool tick. He's one of my favorites because I'm always a strong fan of anybody who does things differently. And so where most of our ticks are overwintering during the colder months, they're just lying dormant, waiting for the heat of spring and summer. The winter tick is the opposite. He comes out in the fall and does all his life cycle things and then goes away during the summer. So he's actually looking to tuck himself into bed for the summer. So we'll see those go down. We don't normally see these as a problem for humans, but we will find them on livestock, horses, things like that.
For people who are really averse to ticks, are there anything they can do to hopefully reduce the chance of ticks being on them?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is just being careful when you're outdoors, right? Especially if you're in a long grassy area. The ticks need to be protected from the elements, and so they like to be in foliage, so grasses, leaf litter, and then they'll come out looking for a meal. So if you are in an area where you are in grasses, you have the risk of picking up a tick. The best thing you can do is look a little bit, not fashion forward, but you tuck your pants into your socks, wear long socks, tuck your shirt into your pants so that there's no way for them to get in. You can even duct tape down your sleeves with some duct tape. You really just want to limit the entry points where a tick can get in. And then make sure that once you are back indoors, you take off your clothes, put them through the wash, and then just make sure that you do a bit of a body check, right? Get a buddy to check your body. Now, unfortunately, ticks like to go in little places where, nooks and crevices and crannies, and, it's a fairly invasive looking procedure. So get somebody to check all your different cracks. I'll leave it at that.
What's the best way to remove a tick?
So people get freaked out because they don't want to touch it and things like that. Ticks are really easy to remove. Firstly, just stay calm, right? If you can get the tick off really quickly after it's attached to you, your chances of getting something nasty is significantly reduced. So get it off as soon as possible. So then what you want to do is grab the tick between your thumb and your index finger, and you can just steady but firm pressure pull away from the body. You can do it with tweezers and things like that, but the thing I like about using your actual fingers is you've got a lot more grip. With a tweezer, sometimes you can slip a few times, and then you're starting to annoy the tick. It gets a little bit freaked out. It's, you're squashing it, so anything that's in its gut can get forced back out. So you really want to limit that. So really just using your fingers, pulling it off, slow and steady pressure, then just wash the area and keep it clean as you would with any injury or wound.
What do you do with the tick after you've removed it?
So I always, and people get freaked out when I say this, but just do this. You put it in a Ziploc baggie and you put it in the freezer and just hold on to it, right? If 2 weeks later you feel fine and healthy, go ahead and throw it away. But if by chance it was carrying something and then you start getting flu-like symptoms or you're not feeling great, you can then take that tick with you either to your doctor or send it into us for identification, because if we know which tick species it is, it narrows down what you might be infected with. So it gives us a head start for treatment. And we can also test ticks and see what it's infected with. So it just gives us a head start instead of just being, I got bitten by a tick. That could be anything. We now know what species it is, and then we can treat accordingly. So keep your ticks in the freezer for a couple of weeks.
What about controlling ticks on livestock?
Livestock are honestly, that's where we see the majority of our tick issues. And again, transmission of a number of different pathogens. We have Theileria orientalis now in the States. We've had our first outbreak. We don't have the tick vector for transmission yet, thankfully, but it will eventually get here. So we really want to pay attention for our livestock. The thing about a tick is, a life cycle can be 2 years long, right? From egg to adult. Realistically, you've got at most 3 different hosts. 2 of those for the immature stages are things like rabbits and mice and things we don't have control over. The only one you actually have control over is your livestock. But it's only on there for 7 days, 7 to 10 days, right? So the rest of the 11 months and 3 weeks, it's not under your control. So while there are chemical products that you can put on to animals, things like ear tags, those will only protect against ticks that are in the ear. Sprays can work. And if you've got a heavy infestation, you can go that route. But really, what we have found is that pasture burning will significantly reduce your tick population. And it will reduce it for the year after you've burned, right? So if you burn in the spring, you'll get protection. Like if I burn today, I've got protection till end of 2025. 2026, I'm back to square one, right? Because they can lay 10,000 eggs each, right? So it's a yearly thing, right? If I burnt in the fall of 2024, I've again got protection for 2025, but nothing for 2026. So you'll get a year of protection from burning. The most effective in terms of reducing tick numbers is a spring burn. All seasons will reduce tick numbers, but a spring burn really does reduce them the most.
And if people also have their pets outside with them, important to give them a look over too, especially if they're in the same area as you quite often?
Yes. I have a dog who ticks don't like, and he'll pick up the ticks and then he'll give them to me. I've gotten ticks on myself from my dog, who I love dearly, but he could keep his own ticks. If they're in tall grass, that's high risk, right? So keep your grass short where you are, and then if they're out and about, do a tick check, just give them a once over, feel through, especially our longer haired breeds, feel through. We had mentioned the Dermacenta variabilis, the American dog tick, and it can cause paralysis in some cases, right? So especially in smaller animals. So you want to just keep a check on them. There are a lot of products out there that you can either use topically or you give it to the animal as a chew, a tablet, and then it kills the ticks. These do work. They, as with any insecticide, the longer you use it, the more chance for resistance. But, especially when we're talking about some of the tick-borne pathogens that dogs can get, having protection is good for our man's best friend.
Cassandra, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thank you very much.
That was K-State veterinary entomologist Cassandra Olds. There is a new publication titled Ticks in Kansas that is out, which I will link in today's show notes on agtoday.net, or you can also find it by going to the K-State Research and Extension Bookstore, which is Bookstore.ksre.ksu.edu. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but we'll be right back. You're tuned back into Agriculture Today, and we continue our show talking about alfalfa pests and brown recluse spiders with K-State crop entomologist Jeff Whitworth. Jeff, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, yeah, sure. Anytime. My pleasure.
Jeff, what alfalfa pests are we currently keeping an eye on?
Well, it's early season. Our early season pests are, for the most part, pea aphids and the alfalfa weevil. And I call pea aphid a pest, talking very broadly, because most of the time, the pea aphid is a cool weather aphid. They're here early on, which they're here now in around the state, and they're here in the fall for the most part. I mean, they're here the rest of the time, but that's the times of the year that the populations build up for the alfalfa producers to be concerned about. Right now, the pea aphid populations are just starting to build. There are a few adult lady beetles around. I've noticed adult lady beetles that overwinter, they don't seem to be as voracious. They don't seem to eat as much this time of year, but they do consume a little bit. Normally, lady beetles will take care of pea aphid populations. Usually, the aphid populations in alfalfa are generally controlled by beneficial insects, whether it's lacewings or lady beetles or whatever. So the pea aphid populations that we're seeing right now, they're slowly building up. They're, like I said, they're a cool weather insect, as is the alfalfa weevil. So they do best between about 40 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Those populations are building up. If it gets too cold, they don't do much. If it gets too warm, they don't do much. So these populations don't explode like some of the other aphid populations do later in the summer. But under the ideal conditions, they can increase relatively rapidly. The lady beetles that are out there now, they'll eat one here and there, but primarily we recommend pea aphids not be treated just for pea aphids, because those populations will build up and help supply food source for lady beetles and other beneficials later in the year. Now, also the thing is, well, the pea aphid populations are building up, the little parasitoid or wasp populations build up. Everything associated with an aphid population also increases over time. Again, we're early season, the weather's a little bit cooler, so it takes a little bit longer. But And the alfalfa weevils, again, you can go look at the mesonet, and we have our little predictive model for your location about when the alfalfa weevil eggs are going to hatch. And those are predictive models, but they've been pretty well timed over the years, so they're pretty good. It's all predicated upon temperature and your area, so make sure if you are using that, you use the weather station closest to your area, because they can be 2 weeks off from here to even southeast Kansas. So those work really well. But I've been out in the field. There are some alfalfa weevil larvae already hatching. Not too many. The predictive model that you get on the mesonet, again, that's for the bulk of the population. You know, it's like a normal curve. You have a few hatch early, a few hatch late. The majority of the population comes at a certain time. That's what that's predicated upon. We developed that like 10 or 11 years ago. It's really pretty good. It's still pretty accurate. But that tells you when the eggs are hatching. That doesn't tell you if you need to treat or not. That just tells you when alfalfa weevil larvae are out there. And I'm telling you right now, there are already a few out there. Not very many. And a lot of the alfalfa doesn't look to me like it's broken dormancy yet. So if you're out and you're looking, you see a little tiny pinprick size hole in a leaf or a little bit chewing here or there, I wouldn't get too excited yet. There are a few larvae out there. The question I got, it's supposed to get cold this week, down into the 30s. That's not going to affect anything. So what we're going to see this week, and I'm not seeing any forecasted for much below 30 degrees for the next 2 weeks. So the weather's not going to help you as far as alfalfa weevil or pea aphid control goes. But if you do decide to treat alfalfa weevils, and I've been in several fields, I have not seen a field even close to a treatment threshold yet. The treatment threshold that we use for alfalfa weevils is 1 larva per 3 stems or more out of 10. So a 30 to 50% infestation level will cause me to decide to treat my field, but not before that. A lot of guys, when they find that first larva, they want to treat because they think you get out there early on, kill them early, you don't have to worry about it. That's not the way it works. We've tried spraying early. We've tried spray late. We've tried everything. So if you got a 30 to 50% infestation, 1 stem per 3 plants or 1 stem per 2 plants infested, that's when I would start thinking about spraying my field for alfalfa weevils. Again, once you spray that field for alfalfa weevils, that's going to kill all the pea aphids. So that's going to be your pea aphid control. And that's also going to kill all the lady beetles. So the pea aphid populations will build back up. It might take 3 to 4 weeks, but they will build back up. Lady beetle populations won't. But your alfalfa weevils might also, because those larvae are out there still feeding. The adults can still be laying eggs from now till the temperatures are over 65, 70 degrees. Once you've treated, you still need to go back every 10 to 14 days and resample that field to make sure they don't, reach the treatment threshold again. So the alfalfa weevils, I've not seen a field yet that has even become close to a treatment threshold, but for the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you need to keep close watch on them because alfalfa weevils are a severe pest, and you'll have to donate that first cutting to them if you miss that threshold.
And something else people could start seeing, brown recluse spiders.
Brown recluse spiders. It's been asleep, in hibernation, in dormancy, whatever you want to call it, since October. They love barns, outbuildings, any place where there's lots of boxes, saddles, old equipment in storage. That's why this time of year I start getting calls about brown recluse spiders. Guys go out and start getting stuff out of their storage closets or their sheds or their barns that they haven't messed with all winter. You start seeing brown recluse spiders. Plus, the brown recluse spider becomes active this time of year. They're inactive from October till March. Whether they're inside or outside doesn't matter, but now they're becoming active. Now is the time to think about brown recluse spiders. If you are worried about them, the number one thing to do is clean out storage closets, clean out sheds, clean out any place where there's equipment stored or boxes or they really like cardboard or insulation. They really like insulation. The best place we collected brown recluse spiders back when we were collecting them one time was a horse farm. Guys had a bunch of saddles and stuff stored away. I don't know why, but those saddles they hadn't used for a year or two, they were full of brown recluse spiders. So any old equipment, anything like that, remember, it might have some grain, it might have some vegetation still attached to it, which attracts other insects. That's the food of the brown recluse spider. That's one of the reasons why they're attracted there. Or you have a shed with a night light on, or just remember they're looking for their food source, and that's some sort of insect or another spider. So the brown recluse spiders are becoming active right now. Now's the time. Get rid of all the clutter. And now's the time to clean it up. Get your shop vac out, suck all the dust up, suck everything up behind the wall, all that kind of stuff. I know you're not going to do that. But anyway, clean it as well as you can. And now's the time to spray, if you want to spray, because the brown recluse spiders, as they come out of dormancy, they're hungry. Just like, after you sleep for a week, you get up and you're hungry, so they're out looking for food. They are cannibals. They will eat each other, but they will also eat recently dead insects. So they're scavengers, so they're really tough to kill. And when you spray a residual insecticide, if that brown recluse spider doesn't get into it while it's still wet, while it's still drying, or for about 24 hours, it's not going to be too effective on brown recluse spiders. We normally don't recommend treating with an insecticide or a caricide spray. Other than that, should get rid of a food source. If you spray often enough so that there's no crickets, no other spiders, no ants, no food source, then the brown recluse spider will go away also. So it's a matter of attrition. It may take a while, but if you have a brown recluse problem, and you know what, a lot of farms, a lot of outbuildings, just ideal sources of brown recluse spiders. So now's the time to get rid of them. As they become active, they're actively searching for food, and they don't build, they'll build small little rudimentary webs, but they're basically out searching for food. Now's the time to spray it. Hopefully they'll come into a surface while it's still damp, or as it's drying while it's still fresh, or you'll kill the insects, kill the source of their food, and they'll eventually go away. Now's the time. As we go along, they find more and more places to hide in, more and more food sources. It just becomes more difficult. So the brown recluse spiders are now becoming active. Now's the time to try and manage them. Remember, they are native to Kansas also, so they can come in from the outside, but they like inside in old storage closets, any place where you have old equipment or old boxes or insulation or clothes or anything. They'll feed on any kind of an insect, silverfish, other spiders. Now's the time to get rid of brown recluse spiders.
Jeff, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
My pleasure. Anytime.
That was K-State crop entomologist Jeff Whitworth. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but we'll be right back.
This is Agriculture Today. Along with Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. Crabgrass is a summer annual grass that germinates in the spring and dies in the fall. Cool season lawns often struggle during the summer, and crabgrass can take over if the lawn isn't well taken care of. To help prevent crabgrass, K-State Research and Extension Horticulture Agent for Riley County, Gregg Eyestone, says a preventer needs to be applied in early spring. Greg, when we talk about doing things that are preventive, the idea is we do it now and we don't have a problem later on. Sometimes that actually works with crabgrass and sometimes it doesn't.
It does. It depends on weather conditions, how well everything goes. And so if you put on a product this time of the year, it may start to wear out by the end of the season, and so you get some crabgrass, and that may give you some frustration. So timing's pretty important on putting down. There's lots of products to choose from, and some of the timing's different on different ones. So you really kind of need to do some research and figure out what's going to work best for you.
Some of that is just reading the label itself?
Absolutely. You're going to get your best results by doing that. It is a legal document, so legally you need to follow those directions. But just to get, satisfaction, I think read that label so that it's working the best for you.
I think in Kansas a lot of times, depending on where you are, but maybe around here, April 15th is kind of the date that we think of.
It's a guideline for sure. Again, it's going to be weather conditions. We do know scientifically that crabgrass will start to germinate once the soil temperature gets 50 to 55 degrees. It also needs sunlight for that seed to germinate, and so we always encourage a thick stand of grass. Mow as tall as you're able to do so that sunlight does not get down to where those seeds are. But after that, we do know that it will start coming up come soil temperature of 55 degrees or so.
What is the application process? I'm assuming there's maybe some dependency here on what you purchase, but in general, how do we put this on?
Yeah, so a pre-emergent or a preventative type of product is something we're going to put down on our lawn. There are some for the landscape as well, if you get crabgrass growing up in a shrub bed or something like that. Typically, we try to get a good even coverage of that product down, so if it's a granular, you're probably using some type of spreader to get that evenly distributed. I will tell you that the crabgrass, again, is going to grow in those kind of areas where it gets sunlight and where it's harder to grow some of our turf grass in particular. So usually along the driveway, the walk, or the curb are probably areas where you're going to see more concentration of crabgrass coming up. And so you're going to make sure that you're concentrating on having enough active ingredient in those particular locations. Used to think that it was kind of like putting out a blanket over an area, and if you were to hoe out a weed or something like that, you'd make a hole in that blanket and the weed would pop up through there. To a certain degree, that may be true, but it's more that there's enough active ingredient next to that hole that would go ahead and control that crabgrass. So it's really getting the right amount of product in the location that you're trying to control.
Do we need to take into account what the weather forecast is going to be like after we've applied the preventer?
Yeah, so we need to activate it, and so that usually takes water or irrigation. You could time it with the rain, but from my experience, that doesn't usually work. So about a quarter to a half inch of moisture to activate that. And again, you put it down and you water it in, and it's probably not going to be active for maybe a week or so. So we're targeting putting that down before the crabgrass is starting to show up for the majority of products. There are products out there, or at least a product, that will control some small young crabgrass that's already germinated and, again, prevent any more from coming up and growing. So there's lots of choices nowadays of products, so you just want to read your label and select the one that's going to work for you best.
And take note if it needs a second application.
True. Some of our older products, which work very well and have a broad spectrum of weeds that they manage besides crabgrass, may take a second application, so about 6 to 8 weeks later you put down a second one. And we do have other options nowadays, so there are post-emergent products that control crabgrass in our lawns, not going to affect your lawn. So you have a second opportunity to put down something after you see some crabgrass coming up. Again, we always want to have a thick stand of grass if it's in our lawn that we're trying to control to reduce the pressure to begin with.
That's K-State Research and Extension Horticulture Agent for Riley County, Gregg Eyestone, with information on preventing crabgrass. For more information, contact your local Extension office. And that'll do it for this edition of Agriculture Today. For Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. This is the K-State Radio Network.